Welcome back to Humble Running. Today I've got a special episode for you. Another fit, feel, and sizing roundup, this time focused on the La Sportiva Prodigio line. The Prodigio version 2 is coming out in spring 2026. I've already gotten a first run video out there, have some questions on fit and sizing, especially as they have widened out the toe box in this model. I know a lot of you are interested in how that compares to version 1 and also the other Prodigio models in their lineup, the Pro and the Max. I also have a bunch of Q&A questions here. I pulled those from a bunch of the videos that I have posted already on each of these models, so pertinent to fit, feel, and sizing primarily. I'm going to go through those as I try on each of the shoes, cross-reference the sizing between all of them. I'll have each of them on my foot throughout this video. Let's get straight into it. I have one question right away. This one comes from Calico Basin 5. Really looking forward to La Sportiva next year. It looks exciting. You recommend a half size up in those? I recommend a full size up across the board in La Sportiva. All four models here, version 1, version 2, Pro, and the Max, I have a US 10.5 in each of these models. I find that fit is, even at a US 10.5, not particularly roomy. I find probably about 3/4, sometimes a little bit less in a couple of these models here. But my true to size, I typically consider to be 9.5, but I often run many models in a US 10. So I'm typically varying between a 9.5, 10, depending on the brand, depending on the feel that I want in a particular shoe, and of course how far and how long I will be running in that shoe. These models are pretty much across the board the only brand that I wear a 10.5 in. It would have to be a pretty anomalous case for me to run in a 10.5, and even 11, which I'll talk about later. My recommendation is to go up a full size in La Sportiva, and which I recommended to Calico Basin here, and he responded, "Oh no, I found the Prodigio Pro a half size up from my US 13 and just ordered it. Hope it works." And then 3 days later, "Yeah, you are right. Half size up just feels slightly too short. Hope the full size up doesn't feel too loose." So again, full size up across the board in La Sportiva. You could perhaps get away with a half size up. For me, that would be what I would traditionally call my ultra sizing, US 10, but I would say, have to have a quite narrow foot to only go a half size up. A narrow foot and or very thin socks. By the way, I have darn tough ultralight socks on foot here. These are going to be my testing socks. These are a thin sock, no extra cushioning around the forefoot in the heel, so I really want to feel out how these shoes feel on the inside. I don't want to have any cushioning filling up extra space, so I can give you more details on the fit. Let's take a quick look at Prodigio 1 here. I also have the Pro on my other foot, so I'll talk a little bit about sizing comparison between these two here. So this model here, I've actually had passed off to a friend, so he's been running them for quite some time. I did receive this model after I received the Pro model, so as you can imagine, a little bit of a step down in kind of ride, feel, and performance, having run in this Pro on my right foot first, then getting into the regular Prodigio model. The Prodigio model was the original, released a year earlier. Both US 10.5 here. I do think out of the shoes here, this is the narrowest and most low volume fit. You could probably tell, being that this is a white upper, there's these two straps here coming across, and they're attaching to that bottom gilly eyelet thing here, and I find that kind of tightens it, gives you a good foothold, but the angle that it comes in at, it just seems to come over the top at a pretty shallow angle. I'll take a look at this shoe side by side and see the difference with the Prodigio 2 in a moment, but it just comes a little bit shallow here, so I could see feeling a little bit pinched in this model. I don't have an overly wide foot. Again, I'm wearing a thin sock here. Typically, I would want to have maybe a mid-weight sock generally when I'm running, and it's kind of a little bit tight over the top, even at the front of the toe box here. See, in my 10.5, I'm right about here, 3/4 thumb. So at a full size up, I don't even have a full thumb's width, so I would still stick with that. Full size up in La Sportiva. Compared to the Pro model here, generally, I think the fit is really good here, but this just really wraps the foot. It wraps my foot in particular very well. I'm not sure if you could tell, but it seems to be a little bit of vertical height here, a little more compared to this one that kind of angles at a shallower angle. It seems to come up here, and that's something we'll see in version 2. Same thing at the front here. It seems to be a little bit higher, it comes up, and then it wraps over the foot. So I do notice, at least for my foot volume, definitely more width here, more vertical height in this shoe compared to this one. Out of the 4 models, for sure, this is the one that has the least vertical space. So if vertical space was the issue for you, then I would say this is probably the one you would want to avoid. Yeah, it is, I guess, outdated at this point, so shouldn't have a problem with that. But I find vertical space fine in this. You do have a higher angle toe sweep here, so that will kind of pull the front of the toes together a little bit more in this one. But for me, it's not an issue, and I think if you follow my recommendation to size up by a full size, then you shouldn't have an issue there. I've got about 3/4 here, but it may feel even a little bit closer to the front in this shoe with that toe sweep. Again, that toe sweep is going to pull the toes up. You're going to lose a little bit of length because it's angling up, and it's going to push the toes together. I've heard some have commented that maybe they've gotten a little squeeze here. I think, at least for my foot shape, it works out well. I have enough here in this area. The forefoot is certainly wide enough. This one is a little bit tighter than here. Again, you have more volume, so that gives your foot more space to kind of move vertically, and that in turn gives it space to kind of spread out into the shoe. Different foam underfoot here, Nitro TPU, softer too, so you are sinking into the midsole a little bit. That also helps a little bit with fit, and we'll talk about that with the Max later on. But again, a little bit more verticality here, more volume. Some runners may feel a slight pinch up here due to the toe sweep, and I will look at the difference between this geometry here and the Prodigio 2 in a moment as well. Okay, back to the comments here. This one comes from DG Beam. Awesome to see shoes on the trails already. Do you know what's going to change in the Prodigio Pro for 26? And another one from 1111 Italia 1111. The king is back with some bangers. Thanks for your devotion. He's Italian. Saw the PP white version. There will be no updates to the shoe itself, the Prodigio Pro, in 2026. This is a 2025 model, of course, was first coming out in the fall 2024 when it was first shown. So this will be the second full model year for this one. So no changes to the shoe itself, but they did have a pretty sweet looking all white version. You know I love a white trail shoe. I'm running in hot and exposed conditions in the summer. Love to have a light colored trail shoe. This is obviously dark, pretty warm on the foot if you're out there in 90 and 100 degree exposed temperatures. The white version just looks good too. This guy's Italian, he may like that kind of style. Another quick question here. This one comes from Jeremy N6U. Hey, first, thank you for the content. I appreciate the in-depth reviews and your channel's unique. One thing I am curious about from all the new models at TRE, any of the new shoes going Strobel-less like the Prodigio Pro. I think it's interesting that it's one of the few shoes constructed without a Strobel board and has garnered all the accolades and seems to work for many or most people. I did an informal survey of the shoes I bought recently, and it's the only one without it. Look forward to your future content. Yeah, something unique about the Prodigio Pro, the insole is actually kind of stuck down here in this model, but it is a Strobel-less construction. That means there's no foam layer that's above the midsole layer where the upper is kind of sewn into. There's a kind of edging there where the upper is sewn into a thin strip of edging all around, but below the insole itself is the actual Nitro TPU midsole. That probably gives it enhanced flexibility, and you get more direct connection with the midsole foam itself, especially if you have a very energetic super shoe type or super shoe type foam, super foam. Yeah, there's no Strobel, there's no, typically it could be like a fabric-y layer that's a little thicker. and or textured or like a foam layer a lot of times, and that'll just give that little bit of disconnect between the bottom of your foot. You already have an insole there, then you have the Strobel board typically, and then the midsole. So this one goes without it. Interesting. I did a little informal survey of my shoes, and it's not typically the case, but I do have a couple of models in here. For one, Speedland GSBLK. I have run this shoe already. I'm in the process of testing this one. This one, of course, they've got that double midsole setup. They have the removable midsole here, and then you could slide in the carbon plate in there, but you can see through the shoe the bottom layer of the midsole. So this midsole right here that's peeking out between the outsole, that's what you're seeing right there. Now there is a fabricy layer in the front of the shoe, so they do have this kind of cutout here, and I'm not certain if that's mainly to provide kind of grab or area for somehow the carbon fiber plate to sit a little better in there, but it is partially Strobel-less. There's also that drainage hole that you can cut out, so they want to, I guess, leave an area where the water can drain instead of having the Strobel board blocking it out. So Speedland, generally, they're all kind of like this. So Speedland is one. Another interesting shoe that I did kind of peruse is the On Cloud Ultra, the Pro and the 3. The 3 is kind of difficult to tell because they have that edging and the midsole is black, but I think it's the same as this Pro model here. You have a pretty, almost the same setup. It's a little thicker. No, it's probably about the same. You have that Strobel edging around the outside, and then in the middle, you directly have that Helion HF foam. So Cloud Ultra Pro, Cloud Ultra 3, that's another one that's going Strobel-less in the same way that the Prodigio Pro is. Another shoe I have, this is the Mammut Energy Trail All Mountain. Mammut is coming to trail in 2026. I'm in the process of testing all 3 of their new models. This is their All Mountain, which sits kind of in the middle. Of course, I was inspecting all of their models, and they do have that similar type of setup in here. The Strobel edging is a little bit wider, so you don't have as much foam showing through, but it's still, I would say, having the same effect of, having your foot right on top of that midsole as opposed to having the Strobel in the middle. So Mammut is another one like that. I did poke around a little bit more, but I didn't dig through every single shoe I have, but those are the ones that kind of stood out that I had recently on my mind. Okay, let's go for one question here. This one comes from Labrador 7. Thanks for the video. Great to see some initial feedback on the Prodigio 2. It's interesting that La Sportiva says the Prodigio 2 has a wider toe box because, except for the Max, the last used for all their recent mountain shoes is supposedly one and the same. If the last is the same, aren't the length and width also supposed to be the same? And he has listed here the actual last. The last is the mold, usually whatever it is, plastic or wood, that is made, the shoe is kind of built around. Different shaped foots, contour under the arch, width, of course, around the heel, the middle, the front, the toes, shape of the toe box. That is the last that a shoe is designed off of. It's kind of like the basis of the shape of the shoe. I am not a shoe maker or designer for that matter. It is kind of interesting as I put on this Prodigio 2 here. It's definitely, I feel, wider. I don't know how these lasts work into the ultimate design of the shoe as far as if the upper materials themselves make a difference between having the same last for 2 different shoes. If you have 2 different uppers, maybe you can play with the volume of the upper to make it a little bit different. I really can't say, but I can confirm that it does feel wider here. I'll put those lasts up on the screen. La Sportiva does really good tech sheets, so this information is available in all their handouts for each and every one of their shoes, so it's good to reference. And yes, these are Tempo Ultra Last, so that is shared with the Prodigio 2, both of these shoes on my feet here, and also the Pro model. All 3 have the same Tempo Ultra Last, but of course these shoes do not all fit the same. Having these on my feet right here, take a look at them. It definitely feels wider in the 2. I don't know if it's the exact width. The exact width may be the same. It could be a volume and shape thing, and that's what I was talking about. I don't know how these lasts work. Similar to the Pro model, I feel like there's more verticality here before it turns and wraps over the shoe. Same thing at the front of the toe box. I hope you can see that there. It just seems a little shorter here before it wraps over the foot. And like right here, and even a little bit at this angle here, it seems to come at a shallower angle. Here, the same thing. Let me grab this. It seems to have more, so these shoes apparently all have the same last, but I feel like these two are closer in that they come up a little and then go over the top of the foot, whereas this one kind of just angles right away. And I think that's what gives this the narrow feel, the more of a squeeze here. If you have a narrow foot, it's going to feel great. I mean, this shoe, as long as I'm okay generally over here, it doesn't bother me. This narrowness doesn't bother me, but I could see if you have a higher volume foot, I could see you getting pushed more, losing more vertical space in this upper compared to these two. Definitely compared to the two, because again, the difference in toe sweep here, I feel like this one's higher. I feel like the toes are up more, and it's more noticeable in this one, so you're going to get a little more squeezing in the Pro than you would these other models here. When I'm looking at the two here, I notice more vertical space before it wraps above the top of the foot, and it feels flatter on foot. It does have the toe rocker here, but it doesn't seem as steep of a sweep. I'm not sure if that comes across visually. It doesn't seem to have as steep of a sweep here where it would push or affect the fit of the front of the toe box for me. So this one feels like it has the kind of more spacious volume in it of this one without the toe sweep here. So I generally feel flatter in this shoe despite the rocker. I mean, it just feels wider. It feels like I'm not pulled up as much in this shoe. And you could probably look at the uppers here. I do have some slight puckering here. This is never an issue for me. And I think that is just an indication that, yes, these are both US 10.5, same size, but you could see here, there's more in there. This is really more, I have a slight puckering here, but again, it's really this area here. I just think there's more on top of my foot, and I could feel it inside the shoe. When I kind of pull my toes up in version 1 here, I'm like right on the material of the upper here. When I do it here, I could kind of push the front of my toes into the upper material if I pull them up, but I still don't feel it touching the top of the base of my toes or the front of my forefoot. It still feels like this material is off of my foot. I've got empty vertical space, more or less, or roomy vertical space. If you're really squeezed in this model, then you'll have a lot more variability. I have this even pulled a little bit tight because I don't have a high volume foot in this area. So even for me, I've got plenty of space. But if you have, of course, a lot of you may have a higher volume foot than me, you can definitely have even more space to kind of widen this out, and you'll get more volume again because it comes up more vertically, so it's not, squishing down on top of the foot. So yeah, they're the same last, Tempo Ultra, as they say, but it feels noticeably wider and more comfortable in this one here. All right, back to the comments. Another one from RMS. You make not a single mention of the midsole rocker changes from Prodigio 1 to 2, increased lug depth, which were highlighted in other TRE videos. An A/B test is called for, maybe so. Also, please comment on the vertical toe box room. The P1 low height was noticeable to me, especially on the downhills. But if P2 is wider, that would remove any concerns for me about volume. So I hope I did answer your question there. Vertical toe box space, definitely more in this one. So if you think it's about the verticality of the toe box, you're gonna be in better shape with this one. As far as the rocker, I think they did mention that they moved it a little further back in this model. I always felt the Prodigio 1, yeah, it does look like it's a touch further forward here. I felt like it was definitely different than other La Sportiva models, Jackal, Bushido, like Akasha. I've never run in these shoes, but they were always, firm, stiff, mountain type shoes. So this was a step in the direction of making a more runnable style trail and mountain shoe. But I felt like this one was more, especially since I had tested this one after I had run in the Pro model, this one felt like it was a more straight ahead oriented model. It didn't have quite the variability or agility, certainly of this one. The midsole is flexible, but not as much as this TPU in the Prodigio Pro here. This is definitely a stiffer ride. So I think they did move that back to get you going a little bit more, being that it's stiffer and more protective. But with the wider fit, I still find it being quite an agile shoe. Check out that first video I was running also in the Kip Summit Max Prodigio 2, of course. I find the fit makes it feel agile, not necessarily the flexibility of the shoe itself. I think the ultimate difference, or if you wanted, not a difference, but if you wanted to pair a shoe like the Pro versus the regular version, you don't have that bouncy Nitro TPU. You have a softer flavor of Nitro EVA, softer setup than this model. Also, by the way, this one has their Ortholite insole. Never a fan of this one. This kind of dulls the feel. Certainly not great for mountain running if you're going through water and all that. They switched to their, I believe this is TPU or TPE type. This is some type of supercritical foam. I think that's the thing here. This is their TPU Nitro EVA insole. So you get an upgrade in the insole with the 2 and a little bit softer Nitro EVA midsole. Getting back to the comparison between these two, this is where you're going to want to cruise in the mountains, maybe a little bit longer. You want to have a comfortable wide fit for real, maybe more rugged mountain running, and the stiffness, the feel underfoot is going to give you a little bit more protection than this one. This one is really, compared to this one, certainly more of a racy model. You have more bounce, more energy, more flexibility, but it's going to require a little bit more foot strength. You're going to be a little bit less protective. There's a small film in here, similar here, but not really too much. This is going to be a stiffer feel underfoot, and it certainly is, even though it's at the same stack height, it is going to be a more protective shoe. So training wise, I think this will be an option that's going to work really well as a pair to this shoe on race day. So he also mentioned the outsole here. I have them listed at 4mm, and I believe this one was also 4mm, so I didn't notice any difference here. Pretty sure this was 4mm on their website. There's really not that much difference, even if it is 3.5, which I don't think it is. So not sure about that one. Now let's move on to the last shoe we have here, Prodigio Max. I have had more issues with this shoe compared to all 3 of the other models here. And I feel like based on the comments from my video review, a lot of runners may be having similar issues as I have with this shoe. Let me put on the left shoe here. Going back to those lasts, this one is built on a Tempo Max last. This is supposed to be a wider fit. Now let's see, first impressions. As I'm standing in it, it's hard to tell much difference. It has a similar, you can kind of look at the puckering here. I would say it has a similar vertical height as the version 2 here. Also kind of more squared off vertically here, similar to the 2 and the Pro, but I think this seems to have more of a aggressive sweep. It just feels that way on the run. Certainly it feels like there's more foam underfoot. There's definitely a noticeable difference with the Max cushion. I believe the other 3 models have the same exact midsole spec stack height there, and this one is up by 3 or 4mm. One thing I note, I just noted a lot of pressure in the middle of the foot, as if, I don't know, the toe rocker was kind of pushing the pressure back down here, and something over here, I had to keep this extremely loose on the run to avoid pressure under the balls of my foot, even though it's certainly quite wide. It looks and feels standing still in place here as wide as this one, but definitely on the run, I feel pressure under the balls of my foot in the max version that I don't feel in any of the other versions. And I probably do lace them a little tighter over here. Something about the rocker or the geometry of this shoe just pushes into the ball of my foot here. Let's take a look at a couple comments. All right, this one comes from John Knowles, 5595. I went up a half size larger in the Max over the Pro. Cushioning is different in the Max, less bounce and less flexible, but not less cushion. I feel like my foot has to work harder in the Pro over the Max, that's for sure. For me, the Max would work better as an ultra distance and the Pro better for sub-ultra. I don't think my foot is strong enough to run an ultra in the Pro. I love both shoes, but if I had to choose one, it would be the Max. Okay, so if you were looking for Max stack, you certainly have those few extra millimeters across the board in the Max model. This runner here probably would prefer something like this. If he's looking for cushion, definitely a lot more protective than the Pro model. He mentioned his foot having to work a lot. Again, that's something I find always with flexible shoes. Your feet have to be up to the task because they're going to be doing a lot more work over the ground, especially when it's more rugged. This one is going to be a more stable base. It's not going to be as much flexy under the foot. Your foot is going to be more or less cradled and protected inside the shoe as you run. He did mention he went a half size larger, and out of the shoes, this is the one that I would consider potentially sizing up to an 11. If I was going to go full super long ultra distance, I might want to have that real full thumbs width up front. And again, with the sweep of this shoe, if you check out my Max review, I felt like it does take up a lot of space. So even though it is a high volume shoe, I do feel like with that toe rocker, it was really pushing my toes together here, and I could really feel the bottom of the shoe pushing into the tips of my toes. Like the bottom tips of my toes feel more pressure in this shoe certainly than the regular Prodigios. I feel that a little bit in the Pro, but again, the Pro is so flexible that it's not as much, even though I feel it there, it's not as firm a pressure into the bottom of the toes. This one, with the firmer midsole and the same kind of toe sweep, it just feels like there's no give to it. So it's just like always having that feeling of the shoe into the tips of my toes. 10.5 across the board, full size up recommendation. I would consider, if I had to, have an ideal sizing in the shoe, I would probably consider an 11, which is a size and a half up for me, which is kind of bonkers. I would wear an 11 and maybe have a thicker sock, or it would probably even fit better and I wouldn't have some of that pressure in the ball of the foot. Take a look at a couple of comments here. This one comes from Jeff Smith, 9650. I have about 50 miles in this shoe now. I really struggled to get along with this shoe. You're right, the cushioning is not soft. Yeah, again, this midsole, you would think with all this, it would feel super soft and squishy, but it's really not. It's really more of a protective, dense flavor of midsole here versus being soft. But the lack of flexibility and soft cushioning initially caused my feet to feel numb and my neuroma to act up. So that's something that's gonna happen around the center of the ball of my foot. Now, I don't have a neuroma issue. That's a serious thing to have to deal with, but I did notice the pressure in the same area. I think it's firmish, it has that rocker, and the toe sweep, it just seems to, this was also my impression, the same as Jeff Smith here, 9650. It just seemed to put pressure in this area, and I was feeling it really in the ball of my foot in the neuroma type area, and I would just like completely loosen this area up here. Well, let's see, let's go to one more comment here. This is Jan Malik, Jan or Jan. To get more volume in the bottom of the Max, don't cross the shoelaces. Have them go up straight into the next hole, so don't tighten the upper. Talking about box lacing here, so in this area, something I haven't tried, but perhaps I could if I really wanted to run this shoe more and I felt more comfortable. You would essentially not cross either here or here, depending on where you're getting your foot pressure. Maybe just test different variations, but go straight up here and then carry on the cross lacing in the upper section. That's called box lacing. You can leave essentially an area of your lacing open from crosses so that you don't push the pressure wherever those crosses would typically be. So that's just a variation to try to relieve that same pressure that I was talking about that Jeff Smith 9650 was also talking about. One other interesting comment, this comes from Nick Benjamin 6527. I have all three Prodigio models in the same size. Max is definitely less roomy in the forefoot than the Pro, but it's okay for my feet. Pro is fairly loose and I snug it up in the forefoot laces quite more. That's pretty interesting because I don't think it is, what did he say? I don't think it's definitely less roomy in the forefoot. I do think it is actually more roomy in the forefoot than this one, but again, something about the geometry gives the pressure. It's not the actual, as I'm standing in it, it feels roomier than this shoe. The Max feels more like the original Prodigio in the forefoot width, but possibly a touch less height. I think again that comes down to the toe sweep here. I do think this shoe has more vertical height than this one. I mean, you could probably, maybe it's hard to see, but this one looks definitely kind of shallower here. This one seems to have more height, but again, it's getting eaten into by that rocker pushing your foot here. So that can probably affect what he's feeling there. I found the Max innersole pops up a bit, pushing your toes up. Again, this is what I've been talking about, and maybe moving and rubbing because it is stiff TPU. Cutting a couple millimeters off the tip makes it lie down much better. So I have had a friend running and trying out this shoe, doing some biking in this shoe actually. So I haven't been running in it in a little while. I kept these insoles. So I gave it to her because I think she wanted to use her own insoles in this one. So I kept these because I like them. They're a high quality Nitro TPU insole. Maybe I could use it in other shoes. But now that I got them back for this little sizing roundup here, and I was putting in, I did notice that they are a little tight, as he mentioned. It could be that these insoles are missized, or maybe they have these insoles set up for a flatter version of this size shoe or this size last. He mentioned trimming a few millimeters off the tip. That is an interesting idea, which I had not thought of. Yeah, it is. It feels like a tighter squeeze than it should. They get in there, but certainly with that upsweep at the front, if there was less of that insole there, that could be certainly a help on sizing. Maybe if length was certainly an issue, or if you were vertically bumping into the top edge of this upper here, you might want to look at trimming down this, because I believe this is a 5 mil insole here. It's pretty thick. You may even though this is a high quality insole, maybe if you have a thinner insole or just a shorter one, that may be a good candidate for a swap for more comfort. So that's about it on the Max there. Let me know what you think of this roundup of the La Sportiva model lineup here. I expect to have quite a few questions down in the comments, and that is totally acceptable. I would love to answer all of them. I think the Prodigio 2 is going to be a great update and fit well in the lineup. I think it's a better match as a mountain shoe than the original version 1. Version 1 did a great job of getting things going with the Prodigio line, but these two moved more towards kind of mountain setups. They seemed more able to handle mountain miles. This was more of like a running shoe with the Sportiva outsole, could handle mountainy terrain a little bit, but it doesn't have that, you want that wide fit, I think, and I think that's something that works really well when you're running in mountain terrain. And this one gives you a better fit, and it also gives you more protection compared to the Pro model. So let's put this one in the middle here, I would say. Racing, ultra distance racing, and this is like your trainer, or if you really like having more protection, maybe a setup similar to these type of shoes, but a little more nimble than this one, a little more protective, less flexible than this one, then you've got the 2 model here. So I think this kind of slots in a little better than the original version 1 does, and certainly the wider toe box is more of a match or more compatible with these 2 shoes than this one here. This one's kind of the outlier in terms of the shape of the toe box. So I hope this is helpful. This shoe is coming out in 2026. I don't want to give an exact date or month even, because these things, as you know, with the Prodigio Pro can vary wildly with shipping and production issues and whatever is going on in the situation everywhere. Look for this shoe in the spring. In the meantime, Ask me all the questions you want to be ready to go with your correct sizing, and so you can be ready to order it right away. Thank you for watching once again. Let me know if you enjoyed this fit sizing roundup, if you want to see comparisons of this shoe against others. Again, I'm out testing this shoe. I'll be running in this shoe quite a bit through the winter into the spring before the release, so perhaps I'll do a full review on this one, more full review on this one, or just throw it into some comparisons. Oftentimes that's the best way to kind of feel out and give feedback on a shoe. So thank you for watching once again. Happy holidays coming up. Probably have a couple more before then, before the end of this year into 2026. So I will see you either here for another roundup or out on the trail somewhere.